You know, it's always really cool when Hollywood decides to take on your profession and glorify it up on the big screen, and in recent years we've had a lot of examples of real-life journalistic struggles and triumphs that have been portrayed in film. I'm talking things like Frost Nixon, you have Spotlight, you have The Post, Nightcrawler, State of Play. What are you talking about? Louis Bloom is one of the best we have in the business. I'll have you know Cal McCaffrey is a national treasure, sir.
From the old movies of 30 years ago and beyond,
to the world of the new films of the last 30 years.
To the movies that are now playing, this is Old, New, and Now Playing. And now, here's your host, Will Robinson Smith.
Hello and welcome to Old, New, and Now Playing, your time machine through the world of movies. I'm your host, Will Robinson Smith. Thank you so much for joining me today. And you know, we've had a lot of great movies, as I mentioned, based on both fictitious and real acts of journalism throughout the years. Most of them have been based on print journalism. Obviously, that is more of the bedrock of our democracy and our nation's history. There have been a few that have been based on broadcast news, but, you know, sort of few and far between, and, you know, I guess until we get a point in which we get a biopic about NPR's Steve Inskeep, I guess we can talk about this movie instead. This is your feature presentation. State of Play is a 2009 political thriller at the intersection of journalism and politics. The movie is directed by Kevin MacDonald, known for directing The Last King of Scotland and How I Live Now. The movie is an adaptation and somewhat reimagining of the 2003 British miniseries of the same name. In the film version, a congressional aide of Representative Steve Collins, played by Ben Affleck, is found dead. That's shortly after a thief was shot dead in an alleyway. Hard-boiled Washington Globe reporter Cal McCaffrey starts looking into the crimes, thinking that perhaps there's a deeper connection here. He's paired with online reporter Della Fry, played by Rachel McAdams, and the unlikely duo work to try to find the heart of the mystery and story while up against the clock. The cast is rounded out by Academy Award winner Helen Mirren, Robin Wright, Jeff Daniels, Jason Bateman, and Henry Lennox. I always love a good thriller with a nice dose of mystery to it. There are some good redirects in this movie. It has a lot of grit and groundedness to it, and for that I credit both the director and the writing team. The now 50-year-old Kevin MacDonald is a Scottish-born filmmaker who really started to come into his own as a documentarian in the late 90s with films like Chaplin's Goliath, Howard Hawks' American Artist, and One Day in September. One of his best-known documentaries, 2003's Touching the Void, got MacDonald a BAFTA award for Best British Film, as well as 4 wins in the British Independent Film Awards. He really started making his mark in the US with his 2006 film The Last King of Scotland, which landed Forrest Whitaker his first and only Academy Award for Best Actor. What that means for State of Play is that MacDonald really tried to create a lived-in world that we happen to be walking into. For example, many of his location shots you see in the movie are not your typical monument moments that you see in, say, House of Cards, for instance. He and Mexican cinematographer Rodrigo Prieto intentionally chose a number of places off the beaten path to give more context to Cal McCaffrey's world, but more on the cinematography later. MacDonald also notes in the behind-the-scenes look at the movie that State of Play was intended in part to pay homage to the 1976 classic All the President's Men. One of the ways he did that was by using the Watergate Hotel and garage in the film. One of the things that works in the movie's favor as well is the story. Distilling down a 6-hour miniseries into 2 hours is no small feat. The task fell on writers Matthew Michael Carnahan, Billy Ray, and Tony Gilroy. You might actually recognize that last name. Tony Gilroy, in fact, is the writer behind some of my favorite films, the Bourne trilogy, as well as Michael Clayton. He also wrote a little indie film that came out recently. You might have heard of it, Rogue One, a Star Wars story. So, little writer's trivia for you. One of the biggest changes from miniseries to movie, and one that I thought worked exceptionally well, was the character of the editor-in-chief of the paper. In the miniseries, the role is played by Bill Nighy. His portrayal got him a BAFTA Television Award for Best Actor in 2004, and fun fact, that same year he also got a BAFTA Film Award for Best Supporting Actor in Love Actually, but I digress. In the film version of State of Play, the editor role is taken on by Helen Mirren, who gives another wonderfully hard-edged but enjoyable performance.
Oh, for Christ's sake. Don't throw those dewy cub reporter eyes at me. It's nauseating.
The heart of the story, though, lies in the relationship between reporter Cal McCaffrey and Stephen Collins, played by Russell Crowe and Ben Affleck, respectively. Now, the movie almost had a very different look, as Brad Pitt was originally cast as Cal McCaffrey and Edward Norton as Collins. However, the Fight Club reunion was not meant to be. The 2007 writer's strike caused Pitt to leave the project, which delayed the production and then forced Norton to leave because of a scheduling conflict. This is the first on-screen pairing of Crowe and Affleck, and I thought they bounced off each other quite nicely. They struggle between being friends with a complicated past and working together following the death of Affleck's aide. Coming back to the cinematography of the film for just a second, one of the interesting choices made by cinematographer Rodrigo Prieto was in how he shot the two leads. In the extras for the film, he explains that the world of Crowe's Cal McCaffrey was shot using mainly handheld cameras with a shallow depth of field, and they shot it on film. That was done to give Cal's world a distinct look from that of Stephen. The congressman's scenes were shot using digital cameras, a deep depth of field, and formal framing to create the sense of a polished political environment, much like the way you would expect to see a politician on TV. The other main players worth mentioning here are Rachel McAdams, of course, and Robin Wright, who actually, I was noticing in the credits, was actually Robin Wright Penn, and that was the first time I knew or realized she was married to Sean Penn. For 20 years? Huh, who knew? Clearly not me. You could almost look at Rachel McAdams' performance as a really early audition for her turn in the Academy Award-winning spotlight several years later. She offers a nice contrast in style and delivery compared to Russell Crowe's character, and the two balance well. Meanwhile, I thought Robin Wright was fine in the movie, but honestly felt a bit forgettable. She wasn't necessarily bad in the role, but it didn't seem like there was much for her to do. The character came across to me more like a plot point than a fleshed-out person. One interesting, albeit random, side note to think about, all of the core cast have actually been in a comic book or superhero movie before, which is kinda cool. I did have one thing I wanted to talk about that did really bug me, and unfortunately, it's actually a pretty major spoiler.
Major spoilers!
So, if you haven't seen the movie, I would highly recommend skipping to the end time code right here, and we'll catch up with my final thoughts on the film, but, you know, I just have to get this off my chest, so...
3, 2, 1!
So at the end of the movie, right, after Cal's learned everything that has happened and he's writing the story, you see him furiously typing away as the newsroom looks on. Then he tells Rachel McAdams' character to just submit the story. And then she does! Okay, I'm sorry, I know this is super nitpicky, but there is no way in hell on a story as big as this one, considering how careful and how particular they were about getting the facts straight throughout the entire movie, that Russell Crowe's character could just sit down, write this by himself, and not have anyone else proofread it. Was it more dramatic? Yeah, sure, but it could have easily been fixed with just a quick shot of just Helen Mirren looking over the computer monitor and just giving him a quick nod. He nods back, boom, done. You know, either him or Rachel McAdams could have done that. Easily could have fixed it, would have made me feel a lot better. Am I overreacting to this? Yes, probably, but nevertheless. State of Play is a solid political thriller with some good performances and a predominantly gripping story. It's not a must-watch movie like Spotlight, but it's entertaining overall and one I think you'll really enjoy. I give State of Play a 7.5 out of 10. So those are my thoughts on State of Play. When you've had a chance to see the movie, I want to hear what you thought about the film and what's one of your favorite political thrillers. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below and let's start that dialogue going. And with that, that will do it for this episode of Old, New, and Now Playing. If you enjoyed the review, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, that would be great. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with all of the movie reviews, vlog posts, trailer reactions that we have coming out in the near future. A lot of good content coming your way. And also launched a Facebook page to keep up to date with all of that stuff, as well as have a little more in-depth conversations about movies and movie news. So go ahead and like and follow the Facebook page as well. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you next time.